Hello. Good evening, everybody. The time is 5:16 p.m. And I'd like to welcome everybody both in person. We have one person here, and then everybody online that might be watching us via YouTube live stream. Let's see. Anyone requiring special accommodations in the future, like Spanish translation or other accommodations for different abilities, please contact the Governing Board office at 602-257-2912 for assistance. And if 3 days works for you, the earlier we get notice for that would be helpful. I'd like to call our board meeting for June 27th, 2023 to order at 5:17 p.m. The board reserves the right to change the order of items on the agenda, and if there are any recommendations, they will likely come in the beginning. I'd like to share our tribute. In partnership with the tribes who called Phoenix their home first, we acknowledge and respect the land our schools are built on. We commit to being a strong partner with any and all tribal nations who entrust their children to our schools. We are grateful and honored to be partners. With that, may we please have our Pledge of Allegiance? Roll call. Mrs. Valencia, whenever you're ready. Oh, and Dr. Vink just sent a message that she's not able to join us virtually today, and sends her regards to everyone. She's in a space that's off the grid, so she wanted me to share that, thankfully.
Thank you. Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno.
Here.
Mr. Regional Carrillo.
Here.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa.
Here.
And for recording purposes, Dr. Alicia Vink. And Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Present.
Thank you.
With that, we do have a quorum and we can proceed. And now it's time for our Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Manley. Hello. All right, we'll move on to item A5, the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any recommendations for the agenda this evening?
Hi. Good evening, everyone. President Trujillo, Vice President Bueno, members of the board and our community, along with cabinet. Yes, we recommend that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion?
Jessica Bueno, so moved.
Roger Carrillo, second.
Thank you both. Any discussion? Hearing none, will you please have a roll call vote to adopt our agenda this evening?
Yes. Ms. Jessica Bueno.
Aye.
Mr. Regional Carrillo.
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa.
Aye.
And Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
With that, our motion passes and we can proceed. We'll move on to item A6, which is our awards, recognitions, and announcements.
I'd like to turn this over to Dr. Gonzalez so that she can share more about our wonderful professional development that we had here a couple of weeks ago.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, cabinet, and our audience. During the week of June 12th, we had all of our principals, IEISs, instructional coaches, and members of the academic leadership team and cabinet come together for a week of in-depth learning and planning to improve academic achievement. Through a partnership with the Maricopa County Superintendent Schools Office, we looked at our data, explored research on learning acceleration, and developed strategic plans to implement student-centered coaching at each site. Our school teams came together and worked hard to create their plans, and we look forward to showing how the focus improves our student achievement. Thank you to everyone who helped make this a productive experience.
Those are the announcements and recognitions. Thank you.
All right, with that, we will move on to item B1, which is our notice of public hearing. As part of the annual budget adoption requirement, we will move to a public hearing. As required by the Arizona Department of Education, district budget adoptions are to be disclosed to the public and adopted by local governing boards no later than July 15th. At this public meeting on June 27th, we now welcome any comments about this recommendation for the fiscal year 2024 budget adoption. Are there any public comments this evening? Hearing none, we will resume to we will resume our meeting as scheduled. Thank you very much. All righty, we'll move on to our superintendent's report. Dr. Davila Hagigat, the floor is yours.
Thank you again, President Trujillo, board members, community, and cabinet. Today, I'm very excited to announce that Magnet has been selected for the Hope Honor Medal, which recognizes individuals and organizations which have demonstrated the passion, understanding, and commitment necessary to keep hope alive by believing, connecting, and time traveling. This is fresh off the press, just got it, and hopefully I'll get to connect with Mr. Walker and his staff. This is exactly how we do things here at Phoenix #1. We believe that all of our students and youth are capable of success, no exceptions, and it's great to be able to receive this honor from Kids at Hope. So that's the excitement that we have today. Also, I just want to remind our families to make sure that we are staying safe, hydrated, and especially safe with water in this very heavy heat. We want to make sure that our students are always watched by an adult so that they can stay safe during these hot times. Thank you. Those are all of the announcements, reports for today.
Thank you very much for those. Let's move on to item D. D1, or do we have any board member reports this evening?
Yes, I wanted to share that Mr. Mike reminded us that we need to set up our two-factor authentication email. So please, all board members, get that done before June 30th. Just a reminder. And then I just wanted to also share that this past weekend, I was able to travel to Baltimore to attend a conference for school board members with an organization called Local Progress. Local Progress is a movement of local elected officials advancing a racial and economic justice agenda through all levels of local government. We build power with underrepresented communities, share bold ideas and policies. And at this conference, I was able to visit a school that is a community school. So I really was able to get hands-on experience of what a community school looks like and the infrastructure and policy needed in order to support a community school. We also learned our leadership styles and governing tensions. So it's a really cool matrix of 4 quadrants that really pushed you into what is your leadership style and gave us a couple of real life scenarios of making a decision. And as school board members, you know, we are often faced with making hard decisions. The other topics I was able to learn about were culturally responsive education, curriculum materials, equity and budgeting, superintendent evaluation, and community schools. So I was very thankful to be part of this organization and be able to attend and meet other local school board members at a national level. And I just encourage my board members to also look into the organization and be part of it. I brought you guys back some stickers. Dr. Vink, I'll give it to you when you get back. But that's my board report. Thank you.
Do we have any other board reports? Team? All right, I will share a few. Today is National PTSD Awareness Day. Each year on June 27th, National PTSD Awareness Day recognizes the effects of post-traumatic stress, the effects post-traumatic stress has on the lives of those impacted by it. Post-traumatic stress disorder has a profound effect on the lives of those who suffer from it. The statistics alone are staggering, but can only tell a portion of the story. The trauma and anxiety associated with PTSD is a constant burden, inseparable from the sufferer. It was once a condition that was attributed only to returning combat veterans, but more and more, the condition is diagnosed in those who have experienced violent crime or lived through catastrophic events. According to PTSD United, 20% of adults in the US who have experienced a traumatic event suffer from PTSD. So I just wanted to tell everyone, be kind to others, think about the struggles that they've got going on. We're all in this together and fighting our own battles sometimes. So I just wanted to note that. And as we end Pride Month, I wanted to share that a West Valley School District took honoring Pride Month to their logo, and they turned their logo into the same thing, but it was showcased as a rainbow. And during a visit there was at Pendergast, I did get to run into I want to call him like director of communications. His name is Ramiro, and he said he's aware of our district and said if we need anything to let Linda know. I let him know that she's not here any longer, but it was nice to have that offer, I guess. So I just wanted to celebrate that. It goes to show just how important it is to show up for your community. And I really like that they turned it into their logo. So I just wanted to highlight that and share that sometimes checking out their social media might be a good idea for us for some prompts on current events. So again, that was a shout out to Pendergast. And that's all the board reports I have as far as current events are concerned. And with that, we'll move on to, let's see. Item E1, our student outcomes focused governance. We will receive information on our 8th grade math and reading data regarding governing board goals number 4 and 5. The floor is yours, Dr. Gonzalez.
Good evening again. Tonight, I'm afraid we do not have Dr. Lloyd with us. He is on holiday with his family, deserving a much deserved holiday with his family. And so it's me presenting our data, but hopefully I'll be able to make sure it's as compelling as when he presents. So we'll start again. This is our governing board update on goals 4 and 5, which is middle years literacy and mathematics. So our goal number 4 was the percent of 8th grade students with a pass rate on our English language arts as per the AASA assessment will increase from 29% on August 2023 to 49% by August 2027. And then goal 5 is similar. The percent of 8th grade students with a pass rate on mathematics as per AASA will increase from 13% on August 2023 to 45% by August 2027. Following this, we have our inputs, outputs, and outcomes. Of course, our outcomes are the increased literacy and mastery in reading and mathematics, as well as increased confidence in being able to access the curriculum, because we know that that's an important indicator for success, not only in high school, but in post-secondary studies as well, and an increased engagement overall. This requires that we have the inputs of strong teacher training and support, evidence-based curriculum resources, and interventions for students who need something beyond Tier 1. The outputs are the highly trained teachers, measurable growth goals, and then an accelerated and personalized learning plan for every student. So here we look at our data. Outcome number 1, this is looking at our middle years literacy from 2022 to 2023, the proficiency level comparison for grade 8. So you can see in 2022, we had about 51% of our students who were showing minimally proficient in the ELA area. We're fortunate to show that that decreased in 2023, but you will notice that our percent of students who are partially proficient did not change. We did show a slight increase in the number of, or the percent of students who are proficient in ELA, and we maintained the number of students who are considered highly proficient on this assessment. So in some ways that's a celebration, but it's clearly not the gains we were hoping to achieve. In mathematics, you'll see that our minimally proficient number for our overall rate in 2023 was 22%. We decreased slightly to 71%. That's a 7, not a 2. 72% to 71%. The number of students who are partially proficient actually increased, but our numbers, and so then our numbers for proficient and highly proficient from 2022 to 2023 remained relatively stable, 10% from 11% and 4% to 3%. So again, not the gains that we were anticipating or hoping for. And then when we look at this data, you can see by school, again, Dr. Lloyd has this organized so that we can see it by the size of the cohorts. We have some celebrations in capitals, decrease in middle years math in terms of the number of students who are minimally proficient, and increasing the number of students who are partially proficient. So again, there's a positive growth score. In Garfield, unfortunately, we do not have the same celebration. We actually see an increase in the number of students who are minimally proficient. The same is true at Herrera. At Magnet, we do see, however, a decrease in the number of students who are minimally proficient, an increase in the numbers of students who are partially proficient, and an increase in the numbers of students who are proficient. That does come, though, with a lessening of the numbers of students who are highly proficient. As we look at the other schools, Bethune, again, we have a celebration in the drop of numbers of students who are minimally proficient, increasing the numbers of students who are partially proficient. But the big celebration here is from 0% in 2022 to 12% of students considered highly proficient in 8th grade math. At Edison, our numbers stay relatively flat with the numbers of students who are considered minimally proficient. You do see, however, an increase in numbers of students who are considered proficient. Kenilworth, we see a significant drop in the numbers of students who are minimally proficient. And we see an increase in the numbers of students who are proficient. However, again, a drop in those students who are considered highly proficient. And then at Whittier, we are fairly stable. However, we do have a celebration again in terms of the numbers of students who are considered highly proficient, going from 5% in 2022 to 8% in 2023. Emerson, you can see again celebrations. We go from 22% to 23, or excuse me, we go from 61% in 2022 to only 44% minimally proficient in 2023. But our big celebration is 28% are proficient and 8% highly proficient. At Hurd, we stay relatively flat, and unfortunately, we lose the numbers of students who are highly proficient, but our proficiency rate goes from 16% in 2022 to 21% in 2023. Lowell, we see decreases in the areas that we want to see increases. Our Highly proficient remained flat at 0, but we did lose proficiency from 18% to 9% from 2022 to 2023, although we did increase our partially proficient from 16% to 26%. And then at Shaw, we see a decrease in the minimally proficient from 32% in 2022 to 23 in 2023, 11%. And then you also see another celebration with the numbers of students who are considered highly proficient from 12% in 2022 to 21% in 2023. So when you look at these breakdowns, that was for our ELA. In mathematics, you can see similar sorts of trends. You see that our at Capital, you can see that our proficiency for minimally proficient went down, which is what we want to see. And our proficiency rate went up from 7% in 2022 to 13% in 2023. Garfield stayed relatively flat across the board. Herrera, we do see an increase in the proficient levels and in the partially proficient, but that comes with a loss of numbers of students who are highly proficient. At Magnet, again, we see similar sorts of trends in mathematics, where we see a loss in highly proficient from 26 to 11%. And we also see an increase in the minimally proficient levels from 23% to 47% from 2022 to 2023. At Bethune, we see again some improvements in areas of partial proficiency, but a decrease in highly proficient from 8% to 5% and in proficient from 14 to 10%. Again, at Edison, we do see a decrease in the minimally proficient levels with an increase in partially proficient, but we also see a decrease in proficient and maintaining of 2% highly proficient. Kenilworth, we do see a slight drop in minimally proficient, as well as growth in partially proficient, but we do lose the highly proficient levels. We have 0 in 2023, but we did gain proficiency. At Whittier, we remain relatively flat, but we do gain the 2% highly proficient, where everything else stays relatively flat. At Emerson, again, in mathematics, celebration in the increase from 0% highly proficient in 2022 to 8% highly proficient in 2023. We also see at Hurd an increase in minimally proficient from 79% minimally proficient to 90% minimally proficient. At Lowell, we have a similar downturn in terms of achievement, with 84% of students in 2022 minimally proficient, and in 2023, we have 94% minimally proficient. At Shaw, again, another celebration in the highly proficient category. We went from 8% highly proficient in 2022 to 14% highly proficient. You also see that the partially proficient numbers have declined in that area as well. So now when we look at this by the demographic groups, you can see our white non-Hispanic students, 70% are passing. Our gifted students, 72% are passing the literacy assessments. And then, of course, areas of concern continue to be our English language learners and our students with exceptional services, with only 3% and 6% passing in those areas respectively. When we look at our mathematics, we have a similar trend again. Our gifted students are passing at a rate of 60%. Our white non-Hispanic students are passing at a rate of 38%. But our English learners and our students with exceptional services are at 1% and 2% respectively. And again, these rates are much lower than we would hope that they would be for all categories, but particularly those groups of students. So as we've discussed prior, and unfortunately, this is really a show of how devastating the pandemic was to our students. And so when we look at this data and we think about this, we look back and remember we were one of the last schools to return to in-person learning. And we do think that that had, while it was important for our students' health and safety physically, academically, and socially, emotionally, we do recognize that there are a lot of losses that our students have suffered. And so we're working to find ways to support that. So one of our inputs is to increase our ongoing professional development. As you heard, we talked about student-centered coaching with all of our key leaders. And we're really focused on the development and support of math discourse, subject matter content, and instructional effectiveness for middle years. We recognize that our students need to have more hands-on experiences to develop the conceptual understanding of math. So we're working on more math manipulatives training, even with our middle grades people. We're also providing individualized coaching from Curriculum Associates. That's our math curriculum that will allow teachers to receive coaching one-on-one from experts in this area, to plan, to provide the instruction, and then to see the impact in terms of student achievement in each lesson that they provide and get feedback on that on an ongoing basis. We're also providing that kind of coaching for principals in conducting walkthroughs so that we can assure that what we are doing with our math fluency is impacting positive student gains. For reading fluency, we're continuing to provide ongoing professional development and subject matter content and instructional effectiveness. This includes extending the work that we've been doing with the science of reading in early childhood to include more support, for our middle years teachers in using scientific approaches to reading and language development in the middle years classes. So that includes the support for scientific research practices, as well as the individual coaching from 95% group, which is our intervention for students who are struggling, but it provides that direct input for developing the phonemic awareness and the phonological awareness that we know students need to be able to read with fluency. This also includes weekly strategies and resources. This is the work that our teachers did over the summer to develop lesson by lesson, grade level appropriate programming for students across the district aligned to standards, and then continued coaching and support for the accelerated learning model. So in terms of measuring our inputs, and this is going to be important as we move forward because these are going to help us have a prediction of where our students are going throughout the course of the year. It also helps us to identify specific ways that we intervene when students aren't making the progress that we expect. So we have our iReady benchmark data. As we've seen in the past, that's been a good predictor of where our students are going to perform on the AASA. So we're going to continue looking at that, but we're adding Ready Math comprehension checks on a more frequent basis so that we can see very quickly in each instructional cycle where our students are, both mathematically and then in ELA with reading and writing assessments on an ongoing basis, so that we know where students are in their grade level standard and what specifically we can focus on to provide intervention and support. We're also doing progress reports to show student growth toward the grade level. So while we've focused on mastery of student grade level standards, we're also focused on how do we continue to show growth and help students see the growth that they're making, help teachers see the growth that they're making, so that we're building on positive footing to propel the learning acceleration. And then that includes then that goal setting with teachers, but also with students. So students have agency in developing their outcomes and promoting their own growth and celebrating the gains that they make. So in terms of references, the data comes, the background data comes from the assessment results and the learning acceleration presentation and student-centered coaching. It's called The Moves by Sweeney and Harris. those are the resources that we're using for that. But I think it's important to note as we move into this conversation, the fact that on the NAEP assessment that's administered nationally, we saw that for the first time in decades, our students in the 13-year range, our middle years range, are performing at the lowest level. And that is a nationwide effect of pandemic, but that doesn't mean that our students aren't going to be able to make gains. It means we've just got to double down on our efforts and find the best ways to support their learning. And that concludes the presentation on goals 4 and 5.
Wonderful. Do you have time for a few questions?
Yes.
I have as much time as you would like.
Just wondering. I am curious to ask about the herd data. It looks like we had a lot more students that we tested last go round. So I just wondered, is that are we attributing that to like something that's happened, or is that just our kids are moving on to high school, and just kind of wondered what that looked like?
So our, if you're speaking specifically about the numbers of students that were present in that is a grade level group that went down in terms of the numbers of students enrolled. It's hard for us to say exactly where they went, but we do know that herd tends to have a very transient population, perhaps one of the most transient in our district in terms of students moving in and out. It's also one of our larger McKinney-Vento serving schools. So there are a lot of students who experience unshelteredness or housing situations that cause them to have transient opportunities. So that's definitely a struggle. There was also, in terms of the performance, the scheduling with a lack of staffing created a lot of unique problems for the school in terms of thinking about how they best serve the students. So some of the experiments that they didn't always provide the number of minutes that were required. So if you'll recall, one of the inputs that we put forward before is that we're going to start having consistent minutes taught across the district. It's one of our equity initiatives. Now we've got that shored up. So across the district, everyone is getting the same number of minutes for instruction at all of the different grade levels. And we think that will also help a lot.
And this might be a dumb question, but that also includes our iAcademy as well.
Our iAcademy students were at Lowell. And so, yes, that is, but that is another area where we saw students who didn't put a lot of time into their coursework. And so without the time in the coursework, and when they're learning without that face-to-face interaction on a daily basis, that really does impact learning. So iAcademy next year will be housed at Dunbar, where we expect to have a closer affiliation to working directly with our students. And iAcademy data was not presented in our slide deck because there are so few students. We're below the threshold of an N of 10, so we don't show that data publicly because it's dangerous in terms of FERPA.
So remind me, when was this data taken this year? Was it just recently or?
Yes, thank you for that. Our data from this is our spring AASA data. AASA is the assessment that the state administers at the end of every year. It's administered in April, and we get our data back at the end of May, early June.
So for the magnet data, you already had the students that were moved from one school to the other, correct? When you
Yes, that
had
does
this
include
testing?
our Dunbar students.
students.
Yes.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't really see any resources that actually touch the parents as we're moving forward. Like I remember when my son was younger, both of them, we had, and I cannot recall the name of the program, but I remember Magnet would bring the parents once a quarter, especially the math program, because they wanted to teach us parents to teach our kids how they were doing their math. Because I would call the school and say, well, I can't help my kid because I don't know how you're doing that math. Even though it's easy, it's not easy. So I tell everybody that was very helpful until it wasn't, because it was either removed because we were lack of resources, because maybe parents weren't utilizing it at the end. I mean, I'm not really sure, but it was a mandatory class for parents once a quarter until your child was in third grade. And I don't know if you have data or if anybody remembers that program, but I know that it was very beneficial for me to sit in a classroom and they wouldn't even allow us to bring the parents. They would tell the kids, this is for your parents. This is us teaching. And the teacher would literally go on the board and give us an assignment and teach us how we're doing it. And of course, every quarter that we accelerated to whatever and so on. That stopped when my son was in third or fourth grade, and I've never seen that before and I never heard about it before. So I would like to see something like that come back, because in reality, the kids are having to get their help from their parents. And a lot of these parents, we don't know what their education is. We don't know what they're doing. I mean, I have a master's degree and I couldn't help my 30-year-old's math homework. So that tells you a lot right there. I say I failed seventh grade. And so I want to see that, something like that, a resource that we can actually offer the parents again. As a suggestion, opinion, example.
I am very excited that you're bringing that up because there is a lot of research that supports the family education component.
Awesome.
And so actually, it's not in our presentation because we're currently in development stage,
Okay.
but part of our Title I initiative, our schools are planning to be able to do family math and family literacy nights, which are just that kind of opportunity.
Perfect.
We can't mandate it per se, but we
Right.
want to strongly encourage it, and working with our FACE specialists. We also have a truly gifted member of our curriculum team who does video.
Mhm.
And so one of her projects this year is going to be to create short snippet videos of how to teach fractions or how to
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, that's
how to
amazing.
read with your child. And we want to do it with things that are found around the home. So you don't have to have fancy manipulative. You can teach this with beans. You can teach this with a piece of paper that you fold, and
Correct.
just being able to give parents hands-on activities, because that came out also from our family and community task force.
Right.
So
I experienced it firsthand, and I know that it was said that parents weren't really utilizing it. But when I was in those classrooms, there was other 20 moms in there with me saying, I have no idea what is happening here. And we were asking questions like if we were students. I'm like, this is so bad. I don't know how to
and
do
it
that.
builds community. It's a great program. So we're very excited to bring that, but it's not fully developed yet. So
Correct.
I'm not comfortable putting it on a
Okay.
slide yet.
I just wanted to, because I didn't see anything in there, but I know what my experience was, and I would definitely advocate to bring something like that back.
Thank you.
Of course. I'm done.
Thank you. But, go for it, Mr. Carrillo.
I think I agree. Board Member Del Rosa, being a teacher, I remember teaching about number bonds. And it's me as a teacher, I was like, well, what's a number bond? Why can't we just teach 2 + 2 = 4, you know? So that's something. So I agree to her point, because it's difficult how parents come in and we're teaching something that seems simple, but we're teaching a different way, right? For our students to understand these concepts. So right point. And to that point, how are we, what are some of the components, input models that we're utilizing that were not in the slide? Maybe lessons learned from the pandemic that we're implementing for the 23-24 school year that sound promising. And then another point, how are we extending that to our family, right? I understand the math literacy. Is there a virtual model for that too? I'll kind of pause right there.
We do not yet have a virtual model. I think that's a wonderful idea for us to pursue. Right now, we're really focused on building up our Tier 1 instruction in the classrooms. We know that that's where we have the greatest control to leverage opportunities for our students to learn is really, and when we talk about Tier 1, it's important to understand that's your basic core instruction where people are going to be able to grasp the concept and move forward. Once we start to recognize that students aren't grasping at some component, that's where we pull into small group and differentiated instruction to meet the specific needs of the learners. In terms of what we learned about pandemic, we learned how important it is for students to have opportunity to talk about their learning with each other, with their teacher, to model what they're learning. Hands-on, minds-on, voices-on are really critical components to learning. We now have, I think we intuitively, and there was definitely research to support this, learning is a social activity. And now that we have this experience, we recognize how critically important it is for us to make sure that our students are being socialized as they're learning and that they're being able to vocalize what they learn, to be taught how to ask questions about what they're learning, to demonstrate and to do think aloud so that they're thinking about the metacognition of what they're learning and how to process when they have a question or they don't understand something. Those are all skill sets we've got to come back to teaching, because it's not necessarily going to develop inherently without those opportunities for socialization and watching what others around them are doing.
I agree, and I think in terms of accessibility, focusing on virtual models to teach metacognition, because people think of that, they're like, what is that, right? Teaching that, those kind of teaching tools of the trade to our parents, saying this is how you can also support in your students' learning. This is what's
Absolutely.
happening in the classroom. This is the practices that we're using. And then switching to the highly proficient, minimally proficient, proficiency just in general, when we're looking at the data, as if I'm an educator, so I understand what it means. Not to say that people are not educators, but if you are someone who are hearing these terms for their first time, seeing this data, what is a category that looks promising at this data? To me, I look at highly proficiency and where that's trending. But can you explain that to someone who is a community member, and what are the optimistic points that we're seeing here?
Sure. So in terms of what these proficiency labels mean, if you're minimally proficient, it means you are significantly below grade level standards. If you're partially proficient, it means you might have some things in the grade level that you understand and are accomplished at, but not enough to say you're on grade level. Proficient is that you are on grade level, you're able to do most of the work that is assigned to you at grade level. And then highly proficient is you are beyond grade level. So some of the celebrations are definitely seeing the decrease in numbers of students who are minimally proficient. That's definitely an optimistic opportunity for us to build on, which is why the goal setting and the growth are so important. When we see that our students are significantly behind, but we're seeing the growth that they're making, that's really important, because you can't jump. It's like, if you can imagine, there used to be a cartoon where the person is trying to climb the mountain by just jumping up to the top of the mountain. It's not possible unless you're the guy on The Bachelor last night who can do the giant jumps. But that aside, you can't just jump up. So you have to think about what are the progressions that you have to accomplish to reach that. So we look at growth because it helps us build a realistic and attainable goal for students to be able to attack grade level standards. When we are talking about this, I think those are the celebrations, because when we see that decrease in the red bar, the minimally proficient, that means more of our students who are significantly behind are in that I can do many of the things at the grade level. Even if I can't do everything yet, I'm showing growth in that area. So that's a really tremendous opportunity for us to celebrate and to build on, because once you've got those foundational skills and you continue to build, that will accelerate that learning as we continue to go on. The other celebration, of course, is the numbers of students that we see moving into the highly proficient areas, because that means they're going beyond grade level. And that really is a credit to the people who are using our curriculum with fidelity, because that curriculum really helps to build in that gap filling. So when I'm not on grade level and I'm only missing a few things, our curriculum can backfill and help provide that one-on-one through technology and AI needs that we have to be able to understand a concept and propel us forward.
Thank you, especially for touching on the highly proficient. It was good for me to see that our students are moving out of that category. That's all.
I have another question. I'm sorry. That kind of brought it up because I'm now thinking like I've been part of this program. So currently right now, the kids know about their level based on that report that gets sent to the parents, or are they talked about it in school? Like, does a teacher come out with the report and say,
Every teacher approaches it in a different way, and that's part of the conversation. That's part of why we're building the goal setting process into
Okay.
this. So every parent gets a dashboard that Dr. Lloyd provided and shows the student the growth that they're making. And the point of that is that we want teachers to be having those conversations with students so students can see the growth. Another aspect that we've started since Dr. Lloyd has been here, at the end of the year, we go out and we give Growth Buster awards
Oh,
to students and to classrooms.
Okay.
So teachers get Growth Buster awards, students get Growth Buster awards, and they get a certificate, and we give them bags of candy, which
That's okay. That's
um,
okay. So moving forward,
it's really trying to codify and put into institutional practice that goal setting with students so they see where they are and they celebrate their growth and they set goals for where they want to go, because we know that's a powerful motivator.
and that's what we're going to do moving forward. Work with the students so they can set their own goals, because now that I'm getting all these flashbacks, I remember sitting in the English literacy class and they would tell us how many words,
Yeah.
whatever that test is, words per minute they were reading or things
Yep.
like that. And we would have to set a goal with our child. We
Yep.
sit there with them and said, well, you're reading 50, 40, 100, whichever that is. And we would have to sit there and do a little contract with our students to say by the end of the next test, we are going to be at 80, 90, 100. So,
Exactly.
right. Okay, I think I'm done.
That was actually going to be one of my questions, is what does that look like, giving the feedback to our students? And is that something that happens across the board everywhere, or is it just some schools? I just kind of wondered what that looked like. That was never a thing for me. It was just, I had to talk to my kid about that report card. So I think that sounds really great. So I
It is
just wanted a
something we
little
want
visual.
every teacher to do, and that is a goal for us to monitor and to pay attention to. Part of the student-centered coaching approach is that every student is engaged in that conversation with their students, and that teachers are looking at student work on a regular basis with their coach to be able to say, okay, this is where students are. This is what we're celebrating. These are goals that we're setting. We're just at the infancy of that. And so I cannot tell you that everyone is doing it. I can't even tell you that 50% of the teachers are doing it, but I can tell you that more are going to do it this year and even more the next year.
Thank you. Thank you. It reminded me that Edetta does something where the kids like showcase their own stuff and
Their
have
growth
to gather their,
portfolios.
yeah. So I didn't make that connection until you were mentioning that. Okay, now I get a better visual. So thank you
So
very much.
now you realize if you start asking me questions about learning, I can go on forever.
My kid only got a growth award from getting too tall, the tallest of the classrooms. Yeah, exactly.
So do I hear that we're ready to move on, or do we have any more questions? All right, thank you very much, Dr. Gonzalez. You did mention it's sometimes not the data we want to see, but I do want to tell you that we value that as a board. We value the transparency, we value the path that we're on. And in doing so, we demonstrate that we are standing in our integrity to see where we're at. So that way we know where we're going and we're focused on our students. So thank you for, and your team for getting us this data, this information, and really, we do value that transparency because that's what we committed to share with our community. So just a different little spin on it. I do appreciate all you share with us, and I love when you celebrate the celebration. So this is one, even though it doesn't feel like one. Guess we're on to item E2. To receive some more information and update our goals. Is that?
I think this might be a shared agenda
Okay.
item. And what I mean by that is we have the progress monitoring for student outcome
Okay.
focused governance. And then we also have our board goals update. So we'll take
Okay.
your lead on that one.
Yeah, I think we'll start with the progress monitoring just to kind of give a heads up as far as where our check-ins and stuff are. So either one of you would like to share what that looks like on your end, and then we'll move on from there.
If we can have the progress monitoring student outcomes slide. Oh, there it is. Found it. So our commitment continues to be as a team of administration and board members to make sure that we are using the student outcome focused governance to monitor ourselves and be able to monitor our outcomes so that our students can continue to increase in their proficiency. So what we have here as part of our framework is what we are going to be working on and following this upcoming year. And so this is for progress monitoring student outcomes, and it shares what is progress. I don't want to read it to everyone, but it does define how we are going to be able to align our mission and vision and as part of our progress monitoring. And then we go into understanding progress monitoring and how this is beneficial. But where I want to draw attention is during focus or during the monitoring, and if we can move it up a little bit where we have the grid, where we have who, what, why, and how. If I could have my team, let's keep going. Right there. And so here we're able to see conversation focus, which students are the data talking about. You saw a little bit of that tonight where we have our 8th graders, which circumstances surrounding the data for struggling and excelling students, why, which phenomena helps describe what happens, and how, which changes will happen based on the data. And so having this type of focus is really going to allow us to stay really close to not just the cohort, but in our case, we'll be able to see what's going on with each student. And that is part of the work that we'll have an opportunity to do this year. And then we have some conversation starters, who is struggling the most. And a lot of this happens in our collaborative time with our teachers and our staff. And this particular year, we have the opportunity to do it in cohorts of grades with lead administrators and some teacher support. And so we'll be able to see and use this model to answer some of our questions. And then after monitoring, once the board has completed the task of monitoring and choose to accept or not accept the report, then we would be able to see, where does it fit and what is appropriate. And so I think for us, the administration team is to be able to get this feedback and to have that transparent accountability with our board and have it in a discussion, this open discussion. I think it's going to really build that trust with our community and give us the direction that we want to be a part of. And so then we have the next grid of improving progress monitoring and how we would evaluate the quality. You have here the different sections of, are we doing this highly effective? And it gives you each areas of how it's going to be done. And so to be able to, again, hold ourselves accountable as a team for the outcomes of our students, I think it's really continuing to take us in the direction where we want to go to really hone in on what are we doing for our kids and what are some of those barriers that we need to continue to remove so that they can build the proficiency that we know they're capable of doing once they're set up with all of these resources. Anything that you'd like to add? Because I know we're new to this together, but I'm just really excited to be a part of it.
Thank you very much for that insight to your guys' coaching sessions. We, the board officers meet with our coach, and then our cabinet and superintendent meets with our coach. And then once a month we meet all together. So we are headed on the way to reach our progress monitoring, I guess, milestone. So there are some steps that we have to take to get there. And that's where we're starting tonight. Dr. Ramos says we are making good headway on our proposed timeline. So he's very proud of us for the work we're doing here. And let me pull up my small little update. I just kind of made some notes about where we're at regarding our SOFG status, current standing. So I wanted to just share the few things that we're gonna have to do in order to get to our progress monitoring. And I believe that is update our goals, which we're gonna have a discussion about later on. Because now that we have the real data that we were waiting for, we are able to update our baselines and then our trajectories. Ms. Vice President Bueno has to help me understand some of this, and our last conversation was really helpful. So now that we've got the data, we're able to make adjustments to goals 1, 2, 4, and 5. And then we are waiting for Azella. Perfect. And that will come later on in August. And so once we get our goals updated to reflect where we're at currently and where we're able to go, what that trajectory looks like, we can move on to the superintendent and cabinet's presentation of our measurables, and then implementing or understanding what those interim goals are, since you guys are the experts, and what that will help us. If, just so those things will, what's the word? Show us, they demonstrate what we're heading towards with our goals. I need to find my wording better, but that's what the purpose of that is to have that conversation as a collaborative group between the board and the superintendent and cabinet. Since those are experts, they show us how we're doing, how we're going to get there. And they present that to the board. So that way we can ask the questions, does this predict what we're looking for? As far as, having our kids reach just be more successful in their growth and us to hit our goals. And then the other portion is to understand how those measurables and interim goals reflect our state standards. So again, the board gets to learn more about that too. So once we have those items in place, our goals, then we can move on to our interim goals and our measurables. And then once we hit those, we get to our progress monitoring calendar. Is that what it's called? Okay, great. That's what I'm really excited about. So as far as our update is concerned, I hope this is the right space to do it. Once we have that calendar in place, that will list out quarterly how our superintendent and cabinet, I guess, will just calendars, spread it out so we're not having these big data dump sessions, but there's some predictability. We can share that with the community. And it'll just have more detailed information like we promised at our community engagement meetings. So I hope I said that correctly, that's where we're headed towards our progress monitoring, which I'm super excited about. Thank you for including those pages from our student outcomes focused governance manual. And I believe we might have a conversation now about goals 1, 2, 4, and 5. Wonderful. Would that be us or would that be our?
That's us.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank
So
you.
I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gonzalez, and she'll have an opportunity to take us through this presentation.
Madam President, board members, cabinet members, audience members, we're going to look at our student-focused goals. And so on this slide, you can see grades 3 through 8. These are the state proficiency levels. And so you can see what it looks like for our district and the state in terms of passing our math and our ELA pass rates. And so you can see by grade level what it looks like for our district versus the state. In this table, you'll also see the term FAY, F-A-Y. That is full academic year students. So those are students who started with us before the 10th day of school and stayed with us through the course of the year. Non-FAY students are those students who come to us after. The data that we have currently to put this table together, we're able to say who our full academic year students are, but the state has not yet been able to cull their data to say what their results are for non-FAE students, full academic year. So the state is showing for all students, not just those students who have been with the state for the full academic year. So that's why you're going to see those numbers will change when the state finishes doing their data analysis and their data cleanup. But so you can see at third grade, in terms of the number of students who are proficient at grade level, we have 25% of our students compared to 41% of students in the state for a difference of 16%. And this is for English language arts. So knowing that that's where our third graders are, our fourth graders are 34% proficient. The states are 45%, again, a decrease of 11% or a difference of 11%. In fifth grade, our fifth grade students are 24% proficient. The state is at 37%, a difference of 13%. It's also interesting to note this fifth grade. You notice that those numbers are lower than the year before, and you're also going to see that decrease in sixth grade. If you think about where the fifth graders and the sixth graders were when the pandemic hit, they lost some significant learning opportunities. For our third graders, while our third and fourth graders, while they lost foundational skill, we're being able to show that with focused instruction, we can make gains rapidly, but not as rapidly as we thought we were going to do across the board. So if you look at sixth grade, you can see the difference of 14%, we're at 28%, and the state is at 42%. Seventh grade, we're at 34%, the state is at 41%, a difference of 7%. And again, at eighth grade, it's also a 7% difference with 29% proficient compared to the state's 36% proficient. In mathematics, we see similar patterns with 14% difference for third graders. We're at 29% proficient in mathematics. The state is at 43%. Fourth grade, we're at 25% proficient compared to the state's 39%. Again, a difference of 14%. Fifth grade, 18% proficient, a difference of 18% because the state is at 36%. So you see that significant drop in that grade level again. And sixth grade, 17% compared to the state, 30%, a difference of 13%. And in seventh grade, 13% proficient, 30% for the state, a difference of 17%. And in eighth grade, the 13% that we just talked about compared to the state's 27%, a difference of 14%. So knowing that and looking at the goals that we had approved without having solid, we didn't know what our data was going to look like, but these are the goals that we had set here. So you can see the goals that we had set. And so what we're proposing is shown here, and we've highlighted those number changes. So you can see in early childhood literacy, we are at 25%. So we're saying if we're at 25% and based on the data that we can see where we've been in the past and how much gain we have made compared to state, we believe that it's a fairly, it's going to be a robust goal, but it's a goal that we believe we can attain. 25% to 37% by August 2027. In early childhood mathematics, currently we're slightly above the target that we had initially set. We want to keep that at 29, make that new goal at 29% and then move to 49% by August 2027. In English language arts, or excuse me, English language learners, we are still waiting for the data from the state. The state has a new assessment for Azella, and so we're waiting for them to establish cut scores so we know what the proficiency levels are. Goal 4 is our math goal that we just talked about. We did again see a slight increase to 29% for our middle years literacy, we want to see that reach 41% by 2027. And in mathematics, we're at 13% proficient. We want to see that increase to 33% by August 2027. So as we look at that, we want you to see what that progression looks like from 23 to 27. The blue is our literacy pass rate for third grade. So you can see that stair stepping to reach that bar. And then in the yellow, you see our math. So you can see that stair stepping. Here is our 8th grade marks then. You can see again the increase there for English. And then in the yellow, you see our math. And so those are the goals that we're proposing. And now we can open it for discussion about whether or not those are the appropriate goals to set for the board.
I'll begin. So when we had our check-in meeting and we're going over this process, I was very reluctant to really be open to this because of the efforts that it took to just get where we were. And again, Ms. Bueno has to help clarify things so I understand it better. But now that we've got this data in, our educators have seen it. They've given their feedback to our experts here, and it really kind of helped me understand that this is where we want to be. This is where the changes have to be made in order for us to keep moving forward with this process. So I was really grateful for the patience and flexibility with how this was going to go. And I do feel really confident in asking the board to consider updating these 4 goals. And then come August, when we have the Azella data, we will bring another goal to the board. But I just wanted to share my experience with that and ask if there's any other questions, and definitely share with you that I am in definite support of moving forward with these changes.
Thank you for the overview and catching the rest of the board members up based off of our discussion and coaching session. I do just want to thank our professionals since December, bringing us the data and just being very optimistic about where we would be. But again, we appreciate the reality of where we are at and not shying away from the work that we need to put into this. So thank you all for your continued support and making sure that we're starting somewhere where we can see where everybody's at. And then I guess my question would be, when we did our retreat in December, Ms. De La Rosa's first meeting, I thought we were also creating our SMART goals to be 5-year goals. So this wouldn't reflect. So I think, am I right or wrong? Did we do 5-year goals? So then this should be August 2028 then, right?
Yes, I believe that because we took this year out, we should have added another one so that we can make it a 5-year goal. So we can certainly make that correction and also show it in the projection as well.
Okay.
If you look back at the 8th grade literacy and the 8th grade, if you look at those charts where we show the progression, it is actually 5 years beginning each year, but it's not. So our last year of showing that data would be 2028 if we're doing 5 years from this point, as opposed to base. So, yeah. So we've established a baseline. So now we're going to go 5 years from the baseline. That would take us to 2028. And so we would need to add an additional year in 2028 following the progression that we've indicated. So
I need more clarification. Does that mean we are changing the wording to extend out to 2028?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, if we're going to set if we want it to be a 5-year goal, then we would need to extend it to 2028. if we want it to be from 2023 to 2027, showing 5 testing marks, then we can keep it the way it is. But if we want 5 years of data from a baseline at 2023, then we do take it to 2028, and we need to add another bump in our chart.
Oh, okay, because I guess 2023 is really 2022 to the 27. Okay.
So-
Well, that makes sense. I don't know.
I'm leaving it up to you guys because I am in support of updating these. So will we keep them as is or update it to like 27, 28 maybe? I just wonder if we have any friendly amendments to update in there.
Another option could be that as we make this progression, we then add the 28 and we start with this since we have the baseline here. We're open to either direction. This just allows us to be able to just start tracking ourselves. Right now, I think we still have the liberty to add at any time if we feel in 2025 that we need to. And truly, we should always be extending because this is a living document for us. And so if we get ourselves started here, then we can continue to add as we update our goals, because that's what we're going to do naturally.
Any feedback?
I'd be in favor of adding another one just in case, contingent on future leadership that we already know where we're headed despite what our future leadership looks like. We already know our future board members on our part to have that framework as well.
Okay, so then we do want to change it to 2028.
I would agree. I feel like even though we do have the data for 2022, it just kind of feels like we're starting today. Like we're starting this year, moving forward, because I think that data just kind of gave us the data to start, but not really focusing in it because we didn't really know what we we're going to do with it. So I am in favor of adding that extra year today, not having to wait 3 years to add it or 2 years.
Great catch, Vice President Bueno. I really, I do think that's best for this process that we're going through. And if I remember correctly, we're kind of always a year behind with that data ahead. So this would be just a natural progression. So do we have a motion to adopt our goals with the I'm terrible with these, with the amended do I call it a fiscal year or do I call it a school year? School year. Do we have a motion to approve these 4 goals, goals 1, 2, 4, and 5, with the amendment for revising school year 2027 to school year 2028?
So moved.
Chikari, second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Thank you, team. With that, Mrs. Valencia, may we please have a roll call vote when you're ready?
So roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mr. Regional Carrillo,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. With that, the motion passes. Congratulations, team. We got one more step completed for our implementation timeline to move forward with it. So thank you, team, very much. With that, we've got item E3, student outcome focused governance progress update. I think I already explained my progress update. So if there's any questions from the other board members, I get to ask questions all the time because Vice President Bueno and I are going through this training together. So I would like the rest of the board members to have an opportunity to ask questions, just get any clarification that you might need. And if none, no big deal. I would just definitely we are planning to have this SOFG space going forward to continue to include the board and keep moving forward as a community with this framework.
And I do just want to point out that in July, we will be having our board self-evaluation. So that's why we attached this document to make sure that you are aware of what we will be doing next month. If you haven't already looked at your manual, but also to President Trujillo's point of making sure that we have our student outcomes focused governance agenda items, is that you've noticed how it's on the top of the agenda, and that's because we want to make sure that we're getting all the information and our focus is on our SOFG framework.
So we'll be conducting this in a work public meeting, a work study session.
Yeah, it'll be in when we started in March. So we did our first one in March, and we were all zeros because we were just starting. So then again, we would just conduct it at our regularly scheduled board meeting in July.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it for questions? Can we move on? Sweet. Get into my agenda. All right, I'm trying to track minutes as we go. One of the items that we're doing for our student outcomes focused governance is just tracking the time that we spend on these items. So I'm a little distracted with that. But with this, we will move on to item F1. Do we have any community communications, Mrs. Valencia?
We do not have any.
Okay, and none here, none in person at our board meeting. So we will move on to item G1, the approval of our consent agenda. Dr. Davila Hagigat, do we have any recommendations for our consent agenda this evening?
Yes, President Trujillo, Vice President Bueno, and board members cabinet, we ask that you approve the consent agenda. Our recommendation is that it be approved as presented.
Thank you. Jessica Bueno, so moved.
Reggie Carrillo, I second.
You guys are on it. Thank you very much. Any discussion regarding our consent agenda? Hearing none, may you please have a roll call, Mrs. Valencia, to approve our
Roll call
consent
for
agenda?
Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mr. Regional Carrillo,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. And with that, our motion passes and our consent agenda is approved. Just a heads up with that, with our consent agenda, the board is given the consent agenda information ahead of time, and these items are compiled into one motion, so that way we save time and we maintain all the regular duties that we have to take care of as a board. So I forgot to say that at the beginning. And with that, we'll move on to item H.
H1.
Perfect. My computer was hourglassing. So yes, H1, we are moving on to requesting approval to adopt our fiscal year 2023-2024 budget as presented.
And this is Mr. Manley, our CFO's item, and I'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. President Trujillo, Governing Board, Superintendent, and community members, I bring to you our proposed FY24 budget for adoption. This has been publicly available for comment as required per ARS 15905 and Governing Board Policy DB, and as presented at our prior Governing Board meeting. At this time, I would be happy to answer any additional questions that we might have. And then following any questions, I would request that the Governing Board adopt the FY24 budget.
I don't think your mic's on. Mike.
I'll be loud. Do you hear me? Hello? Sorry about that. I will start that right over. President Trujillo, and governing board members, superintendent and community, I bring to you our proposed FY 24 budget for adoption. This has been publicly available for comment as required from Arizona Revised Statute 15905 and our governing board policy DB, and as presented at our prior governing board meeting. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions, any additional questions you might have. And then I would request that the governing board adopt our FY 24 budget.
Thank you for that. This is regarding our public hearing we held earlier. And a procedural formality. We did have this budget approved and presented to the board at our last meeting. So hearing no questions, do we have a motion to approve our budget for fiscal year 2023-2024?
Reggie Carrillo, I motion to approve. Adopt, sorry.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Jessica Bueno, second.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, will you please have a roll call vote, Mrs. Valencia?
Yes, roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Regional Carrillo,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. Thank you. And with that, our motion passes and our budget is adopted. Thank you all very much for that. Yay.
Hey, money.
It does have to be done before July 15th, so we are right on the money with it. All right, with that, we move on to item I1. We are noticed for two possible executive sessions tonight, one to get legal advice and the other to address the evaluation of our superintendent. We will only be having an executive session on the evaluation of our superintendent. Therefore, may I have a motion that the board move into executive session pursuant to ARS section 38-43103 for the purpose of evaluating the superintendent.
Jessica Bueno, so moved.
Reggie Carrillo, I second.
Thank you very much. May we please have a roll call vote, Mrs. Valencia?
Yes, roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Regional Carrillo,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
And with that, we are adjourned to executive session. We shouldn't be in there longer than an hour and a half. So anyone that's going to join us afterwards, thank you for your patience. Anybody that will be checking out, thank you for joining us this evening. All right, good evening. May I please have a motion to resume to regular session?
Jessica Bueno, so moved.
Thank
Reggie
you.
Cutting, second.
Thank you both. Hearing no discussion, may we please have a roll call vote to resume to regular session, Mrs. Valencia?
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mr. Regional Carrillo,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
With that, we will resume to regular session at 8:38. And move on to item J1.
I motion that we hold on. Okay. Okay. Oops. Why do I motion anything? Mhm.
We will move on to item J1. Do you have any?
Your mic's off. Your mic. Your mic's off. I don't have any board requests. Your mic's off.
I have a request, just on the status of the programming of the Family Empowerment Center. I know we're going through plumbing repairs and we just open. But I want to know what the outlook looks for when programming will start, who those partners will be. The other one, the same one with the especially for our Dunbar site, school site, what is the status of our positions filled there? And then just across the board for our school sites, where we're at in terms of number of educators that we still need going into this 23-24 school year. And that is all.
I ask you to repeat that I didn't start writing it down and I normally do, but I was too busy looking for my last paragraph. I'm sorry, Mr. Carrillo. I just want to definitely document it and not just,
I had asked for a board request on the status of our family center at Kenilworth.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is what does our programming look like for the 23-24 school year, I'll say, who are our established collaborators, partners that would be offering resources at that school site, and then an update on what does that process look like for staff or the family center to connect with stakeholders and other nonprofits or resource entities. And the other one is the same, but with the our Dunbar school site.
okay, and that's the one you referred to as like the initiative that we were talking about, like the different things going on, like getting those statuses.
Yeah, for those two, because I know we're very excited about those initiatives, and in terms of progress monitoring, I'm hopeful that those will have huge impacts on our students' outcomes,
Agreed.
which is why I have a close eye on them.
All right. Okay. And that's more like a board update maybe, since it's not in a future agenda item. Sorry, I'm just verbalizing through that. Okay. All right. My board request is to make sure that our administration follows through with the board members' Outlook calendar. Updates that with the meetings that we recently approved, the calendar that we recently approved. Just because I value that communication, since we are in the summertime and schedules change, it is important to value everybody's time and be transparent. So just maybe updating that and making sure that board members know how to accept the invites to look at that calendar, and making sure that that's followed up with each board member, whether or not they can decide if they use Outlook or not. But I just want to make sure that communication hub is updated and accessible and a working item, and not, just sitting on the shelf. Oh, and also request that our board secretary follow up with our board members regarding fingerprint clearance cards. We just got to make sure we're on top of that. Those do expire. And so I recently realized mine was expiring, and it made me think, like, we haven't really been asked what that situation looks like. So just a heads up, so that way everybody stays in compliance. And my next request would be to just kind of give a board update on what enrollment is looking like over the summer, what efforts are being carried out, what ways the board can help be supportive, and definitely participate in any events that we might have going on with new hires and getting ready for the school year. With that, do we have any other board requests?
I just want to add to the request of the calendar invite. I would like a little, even if it's an informal agenda. So even if it's a check-in, if there's a possible of just kind of some action items or task items that you want us to discuss or have in mind. And just to make sure that you're working with us on the schedules, because the 2-3 o'clocks may not work for all of us. And the other one, I'm not really sure if it's a request here, but I would like to know for 2023, if there's any new collaborations with the sports programs, with either new partners. Are we doing anything different? Are any of the schools getting any type of new infrastructure, whether it's 2023, 24, 25, just if we have some sort of a look of what it may look like for the kids and the schools across the district.
Any other board requests? I'm sorry, I said board reports. Both names are on there, board reports and board requests. Let's see. With that, we'll move on to item K2. Do we have any future agenda items?
Yes, I do request that the July 25th meeting on that agenda, I would like to see a presentation from the Family Resource Center.
All right. Any other future agenda items? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item L1. Do we have a motion to adjourn our meeting this evening?
Jessica Bueno, so moved.
Roger Carrillo, second.
Thank you very much. Hearing no discussion, may we please have a roll call vote, Mrs. Valencia?
Yes. Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mr. Regional Carrillo,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
With that, our motion passes and our meeting is adjourned tonight at 8:48 PM. Our next board meeting is scheduled for July 25th at 5:15 PM here at the district office. Thank you all and have a good rest of your night.